So what was the story that you?
It was nuclear fusion being, like the progression of it is getting close to being positive for the electricity yield. So more electricity out than in. We're like right there.
I still don't understand. Like.
So nuclear fusion is a clean version. Fission is what normally happens. Like Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island, all that stuff had fission, which is exploding atoms apart.
What's 3 Mile Island?
That was the American meltdown that happened.
Yeah, it was a near meltdown that occurred.
Was it not a meltdown?
No, it was not a meltdown.
Gotcha.
There wasn't like, I think it was only a partial containment structure failure, since I think they did measurements and like nothing significant was released.
But it happened
But
on
it got
American
pretty
soil.
close.
So there was.
And then there's the Fukushima plant. There was one in Japan that also went down. That's all fission, which is like splitting atoms apart.
And now we're doing.
Fusion, which is taking 2 atoms and slamming them together to fuse them, which releases a ton of energy. It's what the sun uses for its radiation. So it's clean. It doesn't have any radioactive byproduct.
And the byproduct is actually, since you're combining helium together, you're combining hydrogen together, and the byproduct is helium, which is something we need. So
Yeah, exactly. So it's a double positive, and we're really close. We have to put a lot of energy to get any energy out, and we're like 0.9. Like we're right there to
Super
bridging the
close.
gap. Super close, and that's what my article was about.
Okay. Why have we? Do you guys have any idea why we started with fission?
It's a lot easier. Basically, Oppenheimer reference over here.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier. You can use magnets and other stuff to accelerate one electron, and if you have a condensed amount of radioactive material, it's just a lot easier.
But it can be risky.
Yeah. Very risky.
Very risky. Okay. So how long have we been doing fusion then?
I think research started in the 60s or 50s. It's been around for a while. It's been progressing for a while. Part of the article talked about how this has been going on for 50 or 60 years, and it's only now seeing like progress.
Yeah. So do you believe that nuclear energy should be the major source of our country's energy?
Absolutely. Even fission to an extent, just because Chernobyl was using archaic 80s Russian technology, and we have a lot better technology, but fusion I think is the main thing that we should be focusing on, because it's clean, produces helium, which is something we need, and also just no emissions, plus a lot of energy if we can get it efficient enough.
Huh. Producing why do we need helium? As a part of?
well, with helium, it's like helium is needed for like various stuff like cooling systems. But the problem is with helium, it's so light, it just floats away into space. So like it's a finite resource.
So you guys are you both pro nuclear energy?
Yeah, I am too.
And
For sure.
Why is that better than other renewable sources?
Efficiency, to be honest. On a scale of our power grid, I'm not sure if wind, solar, hydroelectric can produce what we need. I mean, I think we're still very reliant on coal, so this is more so a replacement for coal rather than a replacement for renewable energy.
Okay. But you would still think that it's more efficient than wind or solar?
The potential to be more efficient, not quite.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've heard some of the negativities of things like wind, or these like turbine graveyards, where after 100 years of them standing, they're just decomposing on the land. So does nuclear energy kind of leave any footprint? Is there going to be any lasting negative side effects?
With fission, absolutely. There's a lot of radioactive waste that comes on. That was one of the biggest problems with the push for nuclear energy back in the Cold War years, was what do we do with all the nuclear waste? Fusion, it's less to no footprint at all, so not a huge long-term effect of having.
Gotcha. All right, that's all I had. Do you think students should be for this? If there's, any votes, any voting that is done in the future, you think this is something that students should be voting for?
I think they should educate themselves. I know there's a lot of stigma against nuclear energy, but education is the best way. Find out about fusion, find out about fission, and yeah.
Something for me that I think people don't mention enough when they talk about. Sorry, I was looking up something I said before to find in the past to find a story, but like the U.S. generates about 2,000 metric tons of spent fuel each year, but we currently produce about 100 million tons of coal ash per year, which is also pretty dangerous stuff, and yet we just put it in lagoons.
Huh.
So, like with nuclear waste, well, all power plants, gas power plants also have, they have to clean out their boilers every once in a while. There's like stuff that gets stuck, and that's dangerous too. But with nuclear power, the thing is, it's so incredibly energy dense that it's creating waste, but way less waste than fossil fuels.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
an almost like incomprehensibly small margin compared to how much
Yeah.
coal dust.
Do you know what the negativities of coal dust are?
It's so if coal dust,
Doesn't sound good.
yeah, it has a lot of heavy metals in there, so it's a carcinogen risk.
What's that, carcinogen?
Cancer. Also, coal dust itself is radioactive
Oh.
because when you take coal, you're basically taking a whole bunch of rocks and then you're burning them to get whatever didn't burn, and that includes some radioactive elements that then, in addition to other things getting in your lungs, can cause problems because the kind of radioactive elements that are in coal dust, they aren't emitting gamma radiation, which is, that goes through all kind of radiations, emitting more alpha or beta radiation, which gets blocked by your skin or even a sheet of paper. But when it's in your lungs, it causes lots of problems because it has direct contact with your lung tissue, and can quickly cause lung cancer by causing genetic damage to your lung tissue.
Yeah, by your point of education, I knew nothing about that. I don't think most people do. So.
It's also a similar thing that tobacco, it's honestly, with coal dust, it's kind of like tobacco, where you have all this dust and ash from a cocktail stuff, and then also with tobacco, because on tobacco plants, the bottoms of the leaves are fuzzy, so they collect radium that's coming out of the ground, radium gas, and that radium then decays into, I think, polonium, and then that stays in the tobacco. So tobacco is minorly radioactive in terms of alpha and beta radiation as well.
I'm just curious.
So, another reason not to smoke.
Yeah. How do you know of this?
It was a high school class at nuclear power, and that kind of gave me an interest in it. And then, over the years when I see people talking about it, or, I want to go look, find articles talking about this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And then is this also something that you'd be voting for and commending other students to do as well?
Explain?
Any pro-nuclear energy bill that could come up in the future, this is something that we might need an education for, but
yes, definitely. I'm not going to say that it's all fossil fuel industry funding, misinformation against nuclear power, but it's some of it. They're feeding a bit of that.
What makes you believe that?
Well, the whole thing where you have lots of scare stories about nuclear power and how it's so dirty when it's like we're
Mhm.
talking about, again, 2,000 tons of nuclear waste, stored in sealed caskets versus, sending thousands of tons of heavy metals in the air and collecting them, the ones that don't burn away, the ash, collecting that in just open water lagoons, even dumping it in rivers at safe levels.
Huh.
Well, by safe levels, I mean they have no other way to get rid of it right now in a cheap manner, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's all I have. If you guys have anything else to say.
One thing about what he's talking about is actually, like, they definitely have put out propaganda against nuclear power, but they also, big companies like Chevron, all those companies, see the potential of the nuclear energy because the main nuclear research facility for fusion is being heavily, heavily backed by Chevron, like $500 million. So even though they are putting out propaganda, they're saying that this is the future. So even though
That's interesting.
the evil coal companies are being evil, they still see the potential, which I think that shows a lot about the future.
Yeah. 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 100%.
It's like, well, I guess another example is something from my high school class that we did was we had articles and we'd read them and we'd try to guess where they were from. And there was one that was very anti-nuclear that had a lot of like really bad information, and we're guessing this is just from a random person's blog or something. No, it's from Greenpeace's official website, slandering nuclear power,
Interesting. Yeah.
with information that was straight up incorrect, just wrong.
Why do you think if they're backing nuclear, or like Chevron, for example, if they're backing nuclear energy in the future, why do you think they'd be posting misinformation about it now? It's something we can only speculate, but
Good question.
I mean, part of it is that they know that fossil fuels, they're a limited resource. They're going to run out of them eventually, and they need something else they can do, since with these petrochemical companies, what they sell is oil, but what they do is, chemicals processing and, separating out liquids, which is something that will still be useful into the future of nuclear power in various ways. So they would want, in the long term, to have an existing business model, but they still want to be able to capitalize on current,
sure.
oil, coal, and other fossil fuels while they still have them, as
Yeah.
much as they can.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
All right. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Nice talking to you.
Yep.